Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 4 of Cinemental.
Now this I can do.
I can't compete with you physically, and you're no match for my brains.
I don't give a crap if you covered yourself in peanut butter and had a 15-hooker gangbang.
I'm Steve Hovicki, and as usual, I am joined by my co-hosts, Hassan Godwin and Latham Conger III. How we doing tonight, guys?
We are good.
Doing pretty good.
Excellent.
Someone outside's not doing that good right now, but everything right now is going.
Where you live, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
Oh,
Regionalism.
I
Nice. That's how we're gonna start. All right. Okay.
I mean, Fort Apache's across the street, right?
I like people who know the Bronx only from movies.
Yeah, I know.
You guys think
anything in
like,
New York.
You think it's 1917 over here all the time.
Listen, when I started working when I moved to New York from Chicago, and I got my first job in New York City. The only thing I knew about New York City was basically what I knew from watching 20 years of Law and Order. So it's like I knew that Washington Heights wasn't a good place,
Yeah.
but that's where I was going to be working.
But you knew that damn justice was swift, though,
That's
right?
And I knew that it was always accompanied by a dum dum.
Yeah. It's like those guys close cases fast,
I know.
Don't commit a crime in New York.
They don't fuck around.
Like heck no.
All right, let's jump into some news that gives us some fits.
Move!
All right, so starting off hot this time. Back again, David Ayer, who apparently cannot get out of the way of an interviewer's microphone, is now defending his Joker, or Jared Leto's Joker depiction, as the most comics accurate version of the Joker to date.
Oh, God.
I don't know why he continues to feel he needs to defend something that no one appears to be attacking.
And he made it's a total success story for him, right?
Yeah.
It's a total come from behind underdog success story that beat out, or at least competed with, Heath Ledger's Joker, which pretty much set up the gold standard for the performance of Joker in the last 2 decades, right?
For sure.
And he just came up and completely dominated the room with that. And he's been waving his dad's gun around since this whole thing started. Kind of, I don't know.
And
I think he should stop.
yeah, I don't understand why he has to keep defending this. I mean, for me personally, I really liked Jared Leto's depiction of the Joker. I was thinking about this today when I was writing down these notes and typing up my show notes.
Yeah.
I couldn't come up with a version of the Joker from television or film that I've disliked. I mean, going all the way back to Cesar Romero in the TV show.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
They all hold a piece of what the Joker is. They all grab a piece and sort of make it their own. And I think that's, it's not unlike all the different versions of the Batman. People are going to have their favorites. People are going to have the ones they like and don't like. And that's why they keep making them. They're just creating new versions of the same. And now Matt Reeves is saying, which I didn't know that apparently his new Batman film with Pattinson has already been mapped out as a trilogy. But he's already saying that of course there's going to be a Joker involved eventually. And well, yeah, why wouldn't there be? It's Batman. It's his bad guy.
Yes. It's his primary bad guy.
I don't understand why he keeps, apparently somebody posted a picture of a bunch of split images of stills from Suicide Squad and Jared Leto's Joker with his face split onto classic comic depictions of the Joker, showing him here's him in this pose, split with half of him in a shot from this comic panel. There was the one where, the classic one with the hand in the hair from Killing Joke that, was the big one that was actually used to for some promotion and marketing stuff for Suicide Squad.
Right.
I didn't dislike Suicide Squad. I enjoyed it. I like Cara Delevingne. All of the characters in that movie, none of them were any that like really moved the meter for me in general, especially from a comic standpoint. But the movie in and of itself, I didn't have a big issue with.
Right.
Well, I would say the reason I haven't seen Suicide Squad is because I'm Batmaned out when that movie came out, and nothing about the cast or the congregation of these comic book villains or whatever we're going to call them interested me. And especially, I mean, I haven't seen his performance, so I don't know, but the pictures of Jared Leto did not make me want to go see that movie.
Okay.
And I still haven't seen it.
All right.
So I don't have any context on this really, except when you just mentioned that the new, we got another trilogy coming. I mean, I understand how important it is to our pop culture, but if we don't start creating new stories, we're going to have Batman trilogies until the day we die, and that doesn't interest me.
Yeah.
Well, the biggest problem there is it's the one character in the Warner Brothers / DC Comics collection of IP that consistently makes money.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
cash cow.
They're going to make Superman film.
Yes,
I mean, Superman and Batman are their two big. They're two big guns, and Superman films are hit and miss a lot more than Batman films. They think they've got the new queen on the block with Wonder Woman. The first Wonder Woman film is outstanding
because she's a cash cow. She's a new cash.
It's
she and Aquaman out of nowhere.
I agree, and I thoroughly enjoyed Aquaman. I got to tell you, it's much to my surprise. Lathan, let me ask you a question. I know that the comic book world is not your playground of choice. Have you seen all of the Marvel films?
Yeah, I've seen every Marvel Cinematic Universe film and have seen very few of the DC ones. I've only seen Wonder Woman and Aquaman, if I'm not mistaken.
All right, so you haven't seen Batman v Superman, Man of Steel?
Nope, haven't seen Man of Steel, Justice League.
Wow.
But all the I've seen all the Marvels.
Okay.
But I didn't see the Marvels like I watched them with my daughter, and we watched them from the beginning until the end.
Okay.
The only Marvel movie I saw in the theater was the first Avengers and Endgame.
Okay.
That's the only. Oh, I'm sorry, and Ant-Man and the Wasp in the theater too.
Gotcha. Okay, that's fair.
No, I think I saw another one in the theater too. I'm just forgetting what it is. But my point was
Infinity War.
Which one?
Infinity War?
No, I didn't know. We did not see that in the theater.
Wow.
I think I watched a couple and then realized after however many years, 7, 8 years, oh wow, we've got a long story here. And then my daughter was old enough, so we went back to the beginning and watched them all. So that's how I got caught up on that.
Let me ask you this then, real quick, off the top of your head, best MCU film.
I'm gonna go with Iron Man.
Really, the first one?
Or one of the Guardians of the Galaxies. I like them both a lot.
I will tell you this: the two Guardians of the Galaxy movies, I would argue, are the most rewatchable out of the entire collection.
Easily, and I think the most fun.
I would agree with you there, and that's probably what makes them the most rewatchable. But the answer to what is the best Marvel MCU film is
I know this one. Can I say it?
Captain America: The Winter Soldier.
I'm sorry. That's in my top 3. That's the most that's easily the most underrated one, and the one you can't. It's hard to tell people about that one because it's not the first one.
Right.
It's just like a chapter in all the movies. But yeah, I agree. That one is awesome, and I did not want to see that in the theater. I saw that one in the theater, and I loved it. And I was like, this was really fun and well made. Civil War 2 is really good.
Agreed.
I think that movie is a financial sea change also because I remember reading an article saying that Iron Man around that time was the cash cow of the entire MCU, that none of the other movies, even though well received, even came close to the box office numbers that Iron Man had. Iron Man basically was such a blockbuster that was sustaining the other movies till about Winter Soldier came out, and that kind of opened up the market for the viability of the entire MCU instead of just having a bunch of moderately successful films and one giant film that carried the whole thing. Each one of them started to turn into their own, giant franchise all alone. And I believe, I want to say, but maybe it's like a fanciful association with the whole thing, but I want to say it all started with Winter Soldier.
It was,
even though I was astonished to have loved the first Avenger, the first Captain America movie, which I remember filing into a movie theater to go see when a couple of nights before the premiere, thinking, okay, here's where they're gonna jump the shark on this whole thing, because it's Captain America. I mean, everything was so cynical, and that movie was just wonderful. It did really well at the box office, but it didn't do Iron Man numbers at the box office. But it was so good that it was like, wait a minute, something's happening here. This is actually working out. And then I think Winter Soldier just kind of took the ball and ran with it.
I feel like Winter Soldier is where the road turned into the superhighway for Marvel. That's where basically everyone, I think, finally started to really get it and get on board with the program.
You managed to say what I just tried to say, but with way less words. So nicely done.
Well,
road to superhighway done.
Yeah. Damn you, analogy. And I
wish I'd said that.
Okay, Latham, what do you got in your pocket?
All I had was this removing of Gone with the Wind from HBO Max and just suddenly deciding we need a warning label on this piece of art again because I looked out the window today. I get it, but I think with art, if you're going to start, obviously there are parts of Gone with the Wind that don't come across well in today's society, but if you're a film goer and you're watching this and you know what year it was made, the context, I mean, what responsibility are we just going to cater to people of the lowest common denominator to make sure they don't watch Gone with the Wind and decide they want to be racist? It's always bothered me when classify art that art when it's subjective. That's what bothers me about this.
Yeah, and here's the thing I don't understand. So isn't essentially them doing this with Gone with the Wind, wouldn't it be the same thing as them, let's say, going and pulling any World War II film that features Nazis in it and pulling that out? Why don't we have warning labels on any film about World War II? Because it's a historic
Westerns where we slaughter Indians, which anything.
Right.
Yeah, I'll let Hassan.
Yeah. I had I don't know what you would call it. It was a conversation bordering on an argument with somebody who came off, they were online, so they came off as pretty young, either that or young or
ignorant.
No, not really.
So it wasn't somebody personally.
It was a friend of a friend.
Okay.
Which is why I was in the process of having the conversation with them.
Gotcha.
And it was about the J.K. Rowling situation that's going on now.
Yes.
My attitude about it, taking no position on it, being in support of trans and LGBTQ people and just about anybody. I'm pretty much think everybody should get a free shake to be able to be represented and to tell their story. My attitude about it is, man, I think I was trying to be funny or ironically funny. I said, wouldn't it be nice if she just didn't say this and everybody could continue to love Harry Potter and not have it tainted with anything. You know, like Dolce's the co-host of Rogue Wave podcast. Dolce's famous comment is, "Don't hit send." You know,
Yeah.
do not whatever whim
Yeah.
you know you have, or whatever buzz in your head that you think that you have to get out there. Also, in the context of suicide, Jerry Cantrell's advice is to sleep on it, right? If you
Right.
have some kind of notion, Jerry Cantrell from Alice in Chains, by
Yeah.
the way, for anyone listening, if you have a notion of doing something terrible to yourself, as simplistic as it sounds, you know, just go to sleep and see how you feel about it in the morning, you know, because
The most basic, simple advice of all time. It's great.
so in the process of saying, man, and the purpose was, I understand what you feel about this person now, and how it now colors the work that she's done that's enriched, you know, so many lives. Wouldn't we all have been happier if she just didn't say any of this stuff? You know, if she had these feelings in her head and she didn't express them, you know, she didn't feel the need to you know to weigh them in the court of public opinion. And man, I might as well have been the one who said it, you know, in that forum, because people today don't quite understand. And I will go as far as to make a racial case. A lot of white liberals don't seem to understand how to live with outrage. There are a lot of things in my life that I've grown up and just, well, that's just the way it is. This sucks. I'm never watching this again, but that's just the way it is. Like, I've never had the inkling to do something about it. I mean, I grew up on fucking Tarzan movies. You know, those do not reflect the best light on on my people. Let's just say, you know, they're fairly terrible, and you just kind of have to compartmentalize a lot of stuff. Now, look, it could be that I am of the generation where I am also indoctrinated into the whatever you want to call the corporatization, or the willful destruction of, you know, my own whatever pathology you want to put upon it. But to not even be able to digest a joke of, wouldn't it be better if we just didn't hear this, you know, so that we can go about, and so that we can continue to enjoy the art and not have to think about the political aspect. And I didn't even get into, well, sometimes you gotta enjoy the art while you hate the artist.
Right.
You know, sometimes that has to happen.
Right.
My as we said, and I already said this in the
previously, right?
Yeah, with the outlaw Josie Wales. It's like, wow, this guy. I looked that guy up, and I'm like, man, I wish I hadn't, you know. And then I made a conscious decision, like, well, that's not going to change how I feel about this movie. I'm just not going to let it. You know, I really enjoyed this film. It's a nuanced, very mature gift of compartmentalizing, and a lot of people just don't have it, or it's mental gymnastics that a lot of people just are not going to engage in. They're like, look, she said something horrible. She's horrible. Her books are horrible. Everything about it is horrible. You know. Cancel. And so I think, coming from that, knowing that that's the arena that you're doing business in, HBO Max, that's who we're talking about, right? We're going with the Wind.
Yeah.
I think they're just hedging their bets, and they're like, look, we'll put a disclaimer on it. We will get out in front of it, because if the kids today get a hold of this, they'll relitigate it. They relitigated Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder just recently. Like, they just discovered it.
He just said, you know what? And he did the only way you can avoid something on the internet, there's only one thing you can do, and we all know what that is. You ignore it. And he answered it to it. He's like, nah, don't worry about it. Next.
Right.
Well, it's absurd for two reasons.
It's a non-story.
He's not even playing a black guy. So it's not even technically blackface. And part of the gag,
I mean, it's astounding.
Yeah.
It's astounding.
Is that it is blackface in the film, you know? So it's not.
Well, yeah, but
point. I mean, you this is who you're dealing with, you know. And if you're in the business, and this is in context with my news that gives me you fits. If you're in the business of making money, and you could continue to make money with a quick fix that may be morally reprehensible, such as putting a disclaimer on a 100-year-old movie or whatnot, that you're probably going to err on that side. It's like Steve, is like if you found that Printed in Blood was going to be could be precariously placed in that kind of position, and you could fix it with just by putting an excerpt in the beginning of the book or at the end of the book, you'd probably just do you'd hate it, and you'd find a way to do it where it doesn't compromise your integrity to be able to do it. But you'd probably okay, look, I'm just gonna,
if this is the Band-Aid
for the kids
that's gonna solve the boo-boo. Yes,
you're gonna need a disclaimer in front of Blazing Saddles. Then
Here you go.
I mean,
that's a great point.
It's gonna be incredible. But I mean, look, you've got people talking now. One of my prevailing arguments now in this coming election, without going into any kind of detail, is that why do we have to choose between the lesser of two evils? Right? That's one of the attitudes.
Yeah.
When have I ever had the luxury of not choosing between the lesser of two? I mean, this is a country of 300 million people. Exactly. You're not going to get the choice you want, but people don't get it. People don't understand the percentages.
There should be advanced math in every, and statistics in every junior high and high school year you're in it, because people do not get it, man. They do not get it.
The other side of it, though, unfortunately, could be that we are at an age where we start to see things a little more conservatively, and we're not firebrands anymore. So we do not have an intolerant streak in us where we're just going to, crush the machine and not tolerate the nefarious behavior of the man. Because basically, the Simpsons are on, and we just want to relax for a Sunday evening. So
or that we understand that crushing the machine at the end of the day doesn't help anyone.
Well, yeah, and there's no crushing the machine, because even if you crush it, there's going to be, so we're going to end up putting the machine in place to hold the place of the machine, and that machine's going to end up being the machine.
Then Skynet gets activated and everything goes to shit, so it doesn't matter.
We need the machine to crush the other machine.
Yeah, exactly.
And who's to say our machine
will be better? Yeah, yes. Like Cromwell, another film that we, where they killed Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the king was Alec Guinness in Cromwell. They went 5 minutes, and then offered the kingship to Cromwell, because they just didn't know how to function.
You take it.
With after you've overthrown the king, and Cromwell's attitude was, we overthrew the king because royalty was what we had determined was the problem, and now you're parsing. You're saying, no, royalty wasn't the problem. It was just this king. Now that we got him gone, we'll put you in the And he's like, as soon as I get in that chair, I'm gonna make the same fucking decisions that guy made.
Pretty much, yeah.
So it's what we do, We killed Caesar, and then we made Augustus the emperor, So I mean, it's just what happened.
Great point.
But I agree with you about separating art from the artist. I agree with you about amending art, unless the only time I don't agree is when it's the artist himself who amends his own art, which gets us into the George Lucas territory.
You mean like Steven Spielberg removing radios?
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind when they do that, especially since Spielberg has gone back on it and said he shouldn't have done it. And then when the latest re-release of E.T. has all the original edits taken out of it. These guys, they got a lot of power, they got a lot of time,
and they're narcissists, so they want to
start tinkering.
They want to toy with their own work.
Exactly. But you got to separate. You look, man. I can't read Burroughs. I cannot do it. As brilliant as that work is, a lot of it is very insulting. Now, it's in his writing. So if that was just his attitude, like Lovecraft was also like tremendously one-sided about certain things, but it's not in his writing for the most part. So you can read his writing and not think about his thoughts, not think about his politics.
Right.
Burroughs, a lot of it is in his writings. That makes it very difficult. If it was just
his Lovecraft's writing about fish people, and and Burroughs is writing about jungle life.
Yes.
Hello.
Yeah. So it is its own thing. I don't know how to
there
fix
might
it.
not be a
You know, I
solution. There
I
might be
understand
no
it.
solution.
No. Sometimes you might have to suck it up, and sometimes you might have to change it. I don't know.
I don't have to like
don't
it,
know.
but I'll watch the disclaimer before I turn the movie on.
And I'm not saying, look, man, you know, stop being curmudgeon-y. This is change. I'm not saying that at all. I 100% understand where you're coming from with it, and I don't have a real solution to it.
No, your point about money, that's just they want to continue to generate money, and they feel that's the most prudent thing to do.
Yeah, this will make it easy.
Yeah.
Wait, so how do we make money? I'll just put this just put the sticker on it. Really? That's the fix? Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Ship it. You know, that's
really
the
is.
attitude. Because my news is about the Mile High thing, which I'm sure you've read, Steve.
The what?
Mile High Comics has now, because of DC's decision to step away from
God.
Diamond,
What did this fucking tool say now?
they made all the DC books 50% off, and it's called DC Sucks, the DC Sucks sale.
Oh.
And I mean, this is retailers now making themselves irrelevant. Like, okay, you're
yeah. If Chuck Rosansky wants to sell all of his product off at 50% off, or 50% of his product off at 50% off, that's his choice.
Right.
If he wants to have a fire sale on DC product, okay.
Right.
No one's twisting his arm.
The issue, I would say, even though it's his right, the issue I would say is like, well, the DC has to grow because, like we just talked about, it's got to find a way to make it's got mouths to feed, right?
Sure.
The power move that Diamond made during the COVID, like that the heaviness of the COVID, kind of spelled out to everybody is like, we can't keep relying on this juggernaut, you know, in order for us to be able to do business. Also, the big problem with the move that Diamond made was that when they made the move, the industry didn't crumble. So it starts making people think, well, we don't need this. You know, we can find solutions to it ourselves. So
there you go.
They adapted. They're going to change. Who knows if it's going to work or not, but they adapted. They're going to make a change. Retailers are upset because this is going to alter the way that they do business.
Correct.
But instead of adapting, you know, just like the same conversation about railing against an artist because of their political views, instead of just taking the art for what it is, instead of understanding that that DC needs to adapt, and so perhaps too, maybe we need to adapt, you know, in order to survive the change that's coming. They're going to pull a hissy fit and sell off all this material at half price and make a big show out of, you know, pulling a temper tantrum.
Let me ask you something. And
Sure.
how much do you think DC cares if Chuck Rosansky decides to sell off $1 million in DC product that's been bought and paid for? What Chuck Rosansky makes on selling DC product does absolutely nothing to DC's bottom line.
No.
What the fuck do they care what he sells it for?
If they reacted at all, it was to purposefully stop drinking before they laughed. You know, so they didn't spit up all over themselves. I don't understand what the petulousness, you know, like if you're in trouble, and it's in trouble. I mean, we've been hearing about the perils of the three-pronged way of doing business, the triangle trade of comic books since the beginning. The comic book company, Diamond, and then the retailers, right?
If Chuck was honestly so intent on making a statement, why didn't he just take all his DC product out to the yard behind his building and light it on fire? You know, that's a fucking statement.
Yeah.
Okay, you putting it all on sale for 50% off. What does that say?
And calling it DC Sucks. You know,
I'm a baby and I'm a bad businessman. You know, honestly, with all of the butt hurt that's honestly attached to listen, and I don't mean this in a mean way. I know people who own comic shops. I understand the business is in a lot of trouble, but I also think that there are ways in which this can be turned around and be taken advantage of. And
yes.
You know, and I think that someone just needs they just need to stop and look at things a little bit before they go off the handle saying, oh, you're going to kill us by doing this. I feel like at some point, I think we're just going to need to install windmills on the tops of every comic shop, because that way everyone will know where to tilt.
Yeah.
It's just I get tired of all these people hanging the red letter around their neck and saying, "Oh my God, this is the worst thing to ever happen to us."
Planes were the worst things that happened to boats, and we still got boats. We still have cruises. They upped their game. They made it a different experience, and they managed to stay alive. So
that is the most ridiculous thing I've heard all week, and I had not heard that at all, which is, I'm surprised, because I was trolling around pretty heavily today for stuff. So
yeah, and I mean that's one of the things I went over, and I was like, this is exactly the wrong reaction to have to this. Make an appeal and say this will hurt retailers. What can we do? Put our heads together. Let's get together. Let's start a union. I mean, I don't know, something ridiculous, like something proactive. Yeah. But to just react to change like this, and look what Diamond almost did to the industry. I mean, it was a very substantial thing. If you didn't see that coming a couple of months ago when they closed their doors, then you're
I am 100% on board with you with that 100%.
And that gave me fits. Yeah, that was the news that gave me fits.
That was it.
Yeah, that was mine. That's
surprising. That piece is enough alone for a whole week, believe me. And I've known Chuck for 15 years, and nothing he does surprises me anymore. He's one of the reasons we have a show like San Diego Comic-Con. Absolutely. He was one of the original mega vendors in comics, if not the original mega vendor.
Right. So wouldn't it behoove his own legacy then to try to pioneer a way out of the retail nightmare?
Yes. The answer is yes. But the realism is, he pulled out of Comic-Con several years ago, complaining about the fact that there weren't enough comic book fans there anymore. So he wasn't going to bother to buy his 10 or 15 booths along the wall that he's had for 20 years there, probably doing the show since it started.
Yeah.
But he wasn't going to bother to show up anymore because there weren't enough comic book fans to warrant him, setting up there. And I'm like, well, why don't you just reduce your footprint? Don't bring 100. Don't bring 1,000 square feet of comics with you. Bring some choice books and some stuff that'll move bulk wise. And, you and a couple of people go. Don't bring 25 people with you. Solve the problem, work the problem.
But his attitude perhaps was that I don't want to change. I want this. Right. I want this changing thing to stay the same. Right?
Correct. That's exactly what it is. That is a man hard pressed for a guy who's had a business as long as he has and had to have been forced to institute change to keep up with the times, to be so sort of stuck in a way that he's unwilling to not only recognize change needs to be made, but the lack of willingness to make the change is just mind-boggling to me.
Yeah. And if you're a smaller retailer who's been following the lead of monsters like Mile High, right? Looking towards, and then you see him in the back, like you say, burning all of his DC comics, your first attitude is like, well, I guess we're not going to get any leadership from these guys, I guess these guys are out of ideas, so that's going to hasten things. That's not going to slow things down and make people reevaluate.
Yeah, you know what my first thought is there? My first thought is all these people that shop for DC Comics at Mile High Comics are going to need somewhere to buy DC books. I might as well start trying to get them towards my shop.
Exactly. If this sticker fixes the problem, I will slap the sticker on the product, so that I can keep making money.
Something tells me it's not DC sucks.
Yeah.
Something tells
I think
me.
DC's going to be fine. Yeah, well,
right. Yeah. Exactly. All righty. Is that all of our news? Are we all fitted out?
That's everything I had. Yeah.
All right. Today's feature film, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
My name is Benjamin Button, and I was born under unusual circumstances. While everybody else was aging, I was getting younger, all alone.
Benjamin, this is my granddaughter, Daisy.
Are you sick?
They said I was gonna die soon, but maybe not.
You're odd.
You got your sea legs about you, old man?
I think.
We are almost the same age. We're meeting in the middle.
I was thinking how nothing lasts. What a shame that is.
Some things last.
Good night, Daisy.
Good night, Benjamin.
Directed by David Fincher with a running time of 166 minutes. Based on a short story by F. Scott Fitzgerald, this is the tale of a man who was born an old man and lives his life backwards, getting younger as he moves forward through his life. We join him experiencing his lives and loves through the passages in his diary being read back to the ailing love of his life. So, fun point about this film, neither Latham or Hassan, being big Fincher fans like myself, had seen this film before the assignment for this podcast. So, this is the first time 2 out of the 3 of us are experiencing this film. And I can't wait to hear your thoughts on this, knowing the level of love you have for Fincher overall as a director. Who wants to start? Latham?
Yeah, I'll go. Well, yeah, it was the only film that Fincher directed that I hadn't seen. I guess unless this movie Mank, is it out yet on Netflix?
No.
No, it's not out. Okay, so it's the only film he had done that I hadn't seen. And I'm a fan of nearly everything he's done. I think he's got a couple of overrated films, but his worst film is still better than most people's other films. So I didn't,
We'll discuss what his worst film is later.
Oh,
Yes, we will.
We'll talk about that at the end. For sure. You'll be surprised, what I think is his most overrated film, too. So, Curious Case of Benjamin Button. While watching it, it's readily apparent that you're watching a director at the top of his game. The film looks perfect, and as all Fincher films are, it's meticulous how the story is told. The detail is extreme. The characters are well drawn. I was never bored while watching it, and when I say that, I mean I knew what the concept was going into it, so I didn't go into it blind. I knew what the movie was about, and I enjoyed watching where he was taking us. So I don't want to not praise this film because I like it. I think it's a really good movie. I think it's in the middle of all his other films as far as how they're ranked. I guess my only problem with it is the concept is more interesting than what ends up being put on film as way of the story. I think there was potential here to do a lot more, and it wasn't done, and I can see why, because I don't think a lot of his films, Fincher's films, he doesn't want them to become too complicated. He wants to tell the specific part of the story without going off on, tons of tangents, maybe Zodiac being the exception there. I think it was a really neat idea, and if it's been told before, I've never seen a film like it, so I have nothing to compare it to. I just really felt that more could have been done with the gimmick of the story. So, and then I'll also say the other main point I want to make too was Cate Blanchett's just, it's hard to turn away from her in any film, but this might be my favorite film of hers. I think she's just awesome in this, and I think she's the glue that holds it together. Brad Pitt is great, of course, but I think she overshadows him a bit with her performance.
Okay, Hassan?
Yeah, I found it a strange movie. Same thing as Latham, that it looks fantastic. It's like, it's masterfully done. It's another one of those proof positive kind of situations where you compare maybe, something like this to something like a Michael Bay movie where, you could tell the director is just insecure about, anything that isn't, kinetically, overwhelming. you know, because you can carry a movie. I mean, all this movie is all dialogue. In fact, whenever there is action, you know, like tremendous action, because I mean, they, you know, spoiler for anyone who hasn't, a Nazi submarine is sunk in this movie. I mean, so I mean, it's basically there is it has the tenaciousness to go there sometimes, but most of the movie is carried by dialogue and carried by whims and pulling the heartstrings from here to there, and it is not, just like I agree with you, Latham, it's not boring in any stretch of the imagination, even after you understand what the premise is. And the premise is not even complicated. You figure it out. You're like, oh, this guy's going to keep getting younger and younger, and everybody's going to get older and older, you know, and there are going to be the pitfalls to living life backwards, you know. I got a very heavy, I will admit, but this doesn't diminish the film at all. I got a very heavy Forrest Gump vibe from it. Like, it's the same kind of...
Same screenwriter.
Well, there you go.
Really?
So,
yep.
It's the same kind of feeling to it. It's the same kind of ironic live your life because, you know, don't worry about your ailments and just live your life because it's the only one you got. And there's still, you know, there's still viability in life. You know, there's still something you can make out of any kind of life. And that's kind of the theme of it. And, you know, even when you understand it, maybe 15 minutes into the film, it doesn't overwhelm you so much that you're like, oh my God, you know, every stop overstating your point. I will say the ironic thing that I found jarring about this is that sometimes if you study movies, you know, for any long period of time, there's a language of movies that you understand that can help you predict, you know, sometimes as much as an hour ahead, sometimes only maybe a few minutes ahead of something that's going to happen. You can understand, oh, this is the part where the father dies, or, you know, you can hear by the music and the way the cues are building up and the way the you know, the angles have now changed.
Yeah,
that there's
something's
going to
coming.
there's going to be a shift in energy. And a lot of the moments that Fincher really could have capitalized on as emotional punching bags, you know, he just didn't. Like, as a spoiler, when he went home and he found out that you know, when he was on his honeymoon with Cate Blanchett's character, and he comes home and he finds out his mother died, you know, and the woman's like, oh yeah, she died. You know, it's not this long buildup of him running through the house, you know, and then maybe having to run outside and find a neighbor and someone slowly breaks it to him. It's just like, oh no, this, you know, that happened, that's over, you know. There are a couple of moments that happen like that. When she dies at the end, it could have been a drawn out thing, and it's just kind of, you see the hummingbird outside the window and she closes her eyes and you don't even know what happened with the hurricane, you know, or Julia or Ormond or the rest of the, you know, the rest of the story. And it's these kind of shortcuts to, like, I'm not going to do the trope. I'm just going to let you have the information as it comes out, like as it happens. That is both refreshing, but also very, I found very jarring. There's some things like, wow, you could have made a bigger deal out of that. You could have made a meal out of this moment, and you just didn't. You know, I mean, the biggest kind of set piece that he actually engaged in was when Cate Blanchett was hit by the car, when Daisy was hit by the car, and they went through this long montage.
Yeah.
That was the most effort that he made to get you, you know, in your feel box, you know.
That scene felt out of place too. That whole montage felt like I was missing the point of that scene,
because he hadn't laid the groundwork he hadn't been setting up those kind of visual cues through the entire film. And I'm sure, because it's Fincher, I'm sure he did that on purpose. But I don't think it was wrong per se, but it was kind of like, wow, this apparently, he's setting this up. This apparently is the biggest moment in the story as far as he's concerned. It's the 6 o'clock of the story. It's where everything kind of turns around. I liked it a lot, but it didn't feel like a Fincher film. You know, Fincher's style is so distinct, and this felt like Fincher trying to do someone else. You know, there were some hallmarks of his abilities there, especially like, as was said, his attention to detail. but there weren't a lot of Fincher-isms in it, that kind of would lock this in with the rest of his library of films. So it was just really a strange experience. But having that been said, I liked it. I thought it was a great movie. I thought it was definitely worth my time to watch. It was definitely an experience. I'm not ashamed to admit it worked. I didn't walk away from that movie feeling great at the end, although I felt like I had a full lifetime's worth of experiences from having seen it. So that's kind of, I don't know how quite to feel about it, but I really liked it. I would not put this as the best in Fincher's library, but it's really powerful.
Yeah,
it's good to note too. It's the first film he did that wasn't a true hard suspense film. I mean, the 6 that preceded it were all suspense, action, whatever, and then this is just a straight. There's more drama in here than suspense. So that tone you're feeling that doesn't feel like a Fincher film, I think that's him downshifting a bit, and it felt like a slice of life a lot to me, which is also strange for a.
All of Fincher's films feel like they're kind of a razor's edge of something. Like there's always something a little hidden behind everyone's eyes, behind every door. There's a sense of unease because of how like we're almost in too close. We're zoomed in too close, and we'd like to back up. Especially like movies like Seven, where it's like, like can we just put some distance between us and the events going on? And so I think he rightfully realized that kind of instinct wasn't going to work with a story like this. So in his effort to make it more family friendly or lighten it up, I found his sensibilities with a lighter tone a little off-putting, a little, but I mean, not so much that I didn't like the film, but it was noticeable. It's like, this guy
backed off a bit. He backed off.
Yeah, this is a monster who's trying to be nice. He's trying to show you his gentler side.
Love it. Yep.
So, yeah, a few of the notes that I had. Now, this is probably the 4th or 5th time I've seen the film all the way through.
Wow.
I felt that this time, and obviously it's funny, Hassan, you mentioning the Forrest Gump thing, because my note here is I felt like this movie is smashing Forrest Gump and Tim Burton's Big Fish together to make a movie, and I just and this is what comes out.
Spoiler: I didn't see Big Fish either.
I didn't like Big Fish.
I own it. I meant to watch it. I've meant to watch it for 20 years.
Yeah,
and I just haven't. I never got around.
It is one of my. It is one of my all-time favorite Burton films, but there's a reason behind that, which we can go into at another time. Although it looks like a Fincher film, watching it does not feel like any other Fincher film, and that plays to your point. I think that going through his list of films, this is the only film of this tenor that he's ever done, and I don't know necessarily that it's a wheelhouse he needs to return to. I think that it's a case of I did it. I worked with a cutting edge screenwriter of the time on this film. And we churned out a product that is generally considered, listen, the film received 157 award nominations that year from all the various outlets, winning 81 of them.
It's tailor-made for awards.
It was nominated for 13 Academy Awards, including Picture, Director, and Best Actor. It ended up.
That's a little much.
It ended up winning 3. It won Art Direction, Makeup, and Visual Effects. So
yeah, I'm surprised it won. I mean, I get the visual effects award, but
it lost Best Picture to Slumdog Millionaire.
Tough one.
I think that's a better one, but
I have not seen it.
Wow,
that's another good one. It will be. Well, maybe you won't find it good, but it will surprise you in the ways that it's good. Not that it's good, but in the ways that it's good.
Yeah,
but anyway,
great call.
The one thing I did stand out to me was the score, especially, and when I found out, of course, who did it, it made a lot of sense. It was Alexander Desplat.
Okay.
And as soon as I heard his name, I'm like, well, fuck, of course it was.
Yeah, there it is.
And because it's got his fingerprints all over it. I think it fits very well. He was actually he was actually nominated for a Grammy for the score also. I did find a lot of people nitpicking funny historical bits from stuff because, anytime you have a movie that spans a great period of time like this movie, obviously you have all the nabobs of the internet jumping on and telling you that, well, that didn't exist that year and that wasn't built until 5 years after this takes place. Why is that there? And she's lighting this with a skinny Zippo, and the skinny Zippo didn't come out until 6 years after that, that year it's supposed to be, and crap like that. So there's a whole crap load of that stuff, and I don't really give a shit because none of it affects the fact of the movie. Did either of you take the time to read the short story?
I have not.
Okay.
No.
I actually read it. It is really dark. I've other than Gatsby, I have not read anything else by F. Scott Fitzgerald, so I don't really have a whole lot to compare it to. But yeah, the original story is far darker, and it is the son disowns him by the end of the story. He has a son instead of a daughter, and as he ages, he's essentially abandoned and left alone, in a home to be taken care of. It's the relationship between him and the main character in the story. Her name is Hildegard, not Daisy. A change which I think was probably made as a nod to Great Gatsby, I'm guessing. But yeah, the story was I
plus Hildegard. That's a hard name. that's
yeah. I mean, you could have gone
Hollywood.
You could have gone Hildy or something, right?
Yeah, you could have maybe.
So besides that, I found it mostly sad, really. There was no, I feel like the movie was played up to be sort of more of a celebration, in this sort of living of life, and the original story was far from that. The relationship between him and Hildy, it just, they touch on it for about 2 minutes in the film, an aspect of the relationship between them, and
going in opposite directions.
And that's the core of this story. They're together. They get married when he's looking like he's 50 and she's looking like she's 20. And of course, it's a big, first of all, the story takes place. He's born just after the Civil War, and it ends in the Jazz Age.
Yeah.
And they moved the story up to a more relevant time frame at the studio's request. That was one of the major changes that was made to the story. So the short story was based actually on a remark that Mark Twain had made, that the best part of life was always from the beginning and the worst part at the end. And he just felt, and there was a tertiary comment that's also assigned to him, about you only really enjoy life when you're older. So it'd be, if you were older at the beginning of your life when it's better, it would make more sense. Or that's the gist of it. And that kind of inspired Fitzgerald to write the story. So what's interesting about this, and we touched on this, Eric Roth wrote the screenplay. Eric Roth also wrote The Horse Whisperer, Forrest Gump, Ali, The Insider, Munich, 2018's A Star Is Born, and the upcoming Dune.
Okay, he's all over the board.
And he's solid.
He's got the chops.
Yeah,
he's got the chops for all those.
I'll tell you right now, that makes me much, and not that I wasn't interested at all, but I'm really kind of excited to see Dune now. But that's a different thing. Anyway.
I am looking forward to it. I have no negativity towards it. I think the director is out of his mind. I think he's a brilliant director.
Yeah.
But it's just such an impenetrable book in its own right. So
we'll see.
Yeah, we will.
So
we will.
The original rights to this film, the story, were purchased back in the 70s as a vehicle for Jack Nicholson. After the original purchase ran out, Steven Spielberg grabbed him up for Amblin Entertainment. in the early days of
really feels like it wants to be a Spielberg movie.
in the early days
really
of
does.
Amblin, and then and he's tried to put it together with Tom Cruise as the lead guy, which again I can see that.
Mm-hmm. And he could have done it.
Yeah,
he could have easily done it.
Yeah, and that is where if you look at the credits, there is a screen story credit given to or someone named Robin Swicord. They're the ones who wrote the original script when Spielberg and Cruise had it, not the script that was actually done here. But she got a screen story credit, so I'm sure some elements were used.
Were hers.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Kathleen Kennedy and Frank Marshall left Amblin, and as part of the settlement when they left, they took this project with them. And then they started an all-new development cycle in 1994. In 1998, Ron Howard was set to direct it with John Travolta attached.
He could have done it.
Really?
I think Travolta at that time, during the
that's like
Travolta songs
that
was happening.
98, isn't that like Phenomenon and Michael era?
I think mid 90s. That's around that time.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's a couple of years later. It's a couple of years after that.
That's Battlefield Earth area.
Yeah, I just.
But I mean, no, because what was the movie he did with Hugh Jackman? Hugh Jackman was a hacker.
Swordfish.
That was like 2000, 2001.
Okay.
So we're still in Travolta territory. I mean, it's still his viability.
I always liked John Travolta as the bad guy. I always liked him better as a bad guy than as a good guy.
I just think he's. Oh,
I don't think he could have carried this. But I'm trying to think of a film he's carried.
And I liked Michael. I didn't think Michael was terrible.
Michael's in and of itself, it's fine.
I didn't see either of those.
But you see, the problem with going back and looking at a thing like this, this film would not feel like this, the way what we have and what we've watched.
No,
if the fact that it wasn't done by Fincher. You know, if Ron Howard did it, it would be a different film. You know,
but Ron Howard and they're all from the same camp. I mean, Ron Howard and Spielberg are from the Ron Howard has a lot of Spielbergisms in his attentions to detail and the way he constructs his storytellings. You know, like Cinderella Man feels very much like a Spielberg film, you know, in its own way. He does have his own visual language. I'm sure Ron Howard could have pulled the film off, and I think that would have helped Travolta, but maybe so. You know, I don't know.
So Rachel Weisz was originally cast as Daisy, but then scheduling conflicts came about, and she had to drop out.
That's too bad. She's good.
Yeah.
She would have been fine.
And she looks a lot like Julia Ormond. You know, like they look like they could have been in the same. Because they had to do a lot to kind of visually shift from going from Cate Blanchett to Julia Ormond.
Yeah, they had to get two different.
This was Brad Pitt's third film working with David Fincher after Seven and Fight Club. Brad had actually previously worked with 5 of the actors in this film. He had previously worked with Cate Blanchett, Julia Ormond, Tilda Swinton, Elle Fanning, and Jason Fleming, who is his father. He had worked with all those guys before.
That's cool.
Which is funny, because Julia Ormond was his love interest in Legends of the Fall, and now she's his daughter. That's twisted.
And Cate Blanchett and Elle Fanning were in Babel.
Yes.
And Jason Fleming was in Snatch.
Okay. Wow.
This is kind of fun.
Did they? Here's a question. I mean, you might be about to get to this. They did something with Elle Fanning's voice, right? They used Cate Blanchett's voice.
Correct.
While she was a child. Okay, I knew there was something off about it. All right. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
Is that her in the bed?
Yep.
In the whole movie?
That makeup is
Blanchett
fantastic.
with makeup? Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really.
I was reading some stuff about that, and it said that she could only shoot those sequences for a few minutes at a time because in laying in the bed with under all the makeup and lights and everything else, and underneath all those blankets and everything, you know, there was very limited time for her to be able to shoot some of that stuff. So that's why you don't have a lot of long takes of her. So Fincher has admitted that the reason Pitt, you know, early on in the film where you can sort of see Pitt's face on the little old man attached on the kid's body to it, can make that connection. The reason he did not play the younger versions of himself were that the visual effects budget was gone. They couldn't afford to, at that point, be moving faces around. So they said,
I think that would have been really jarring, though. That would have been, that would have been a
really
bit
weird.
too much.
Yeah, they were just fine having another kid do it. And
Yeah, I agree.
so this is actually a part that I found was really interesting. When he leaves to go off walkabout and ends up in Asia, and there's a sequence of half a dozen shots that clearly look different, that look more like they're almost done with like a handheld video camera. When he's doing that sort of the backpacking through Asia portion,
Right.
and after he's left and gone out to around the world. The reason those look different is those were not shot by David Fincher. Those were all shot by Tarsim Singh, the director of REM's Losing My Religion video and The Cell.
The Cell. Yeah. I thought they were leftover shots from 7 years in Tibet.
Yeah. Well, I don't know the timeline, but apparently what had happened is David Fincher found out that both Tarsim and Pitt were going to be in Asia at the same time. So he asked Tarsim if he would shoot some, basically what would end up being, footage for the film, but just some sequences of Brad doing things as if he were backpacking through Asia kind of thing. And that's what we ended up with. So I don't know how much more. There's probably a lot more somewhere. I'm sure he shot a lot of stuff. They probably spent several days just kind of going around different places and shooting shots of Brad Pitt being Brad Pitt. Whatever.
Yeah.
But I found that both efficient and also very interesting.
He didn't get a credit, did he?
I was just literally just thinking that, and I was thinking I would have to go back and look at the actual film credits to see. I'm sure he's either in the special thanks or maybe he's listed as an assistant director.
Yeah, that's just it. Yeah,
would be my guess. He might be like second assistant director or something along those lines. Did you guys catch the Fight Club reference?
Nope.
No. What was the fight?
So when he sits down to have dinner with his dad after he comes back from being gone and his father's dying.
Yeah.
When they're at dinner and he says, "Oh, I still see you're still drinking your drink." He's like, how is this? How is that? Have you been to the house on Paper Street? When he was referring to the brothel, but the house on Paper Street.
Yes.
From Fight Club. Yes.
All right.
Very
totally
subtle.
Missed that.
Very, very subtle. Yeah, I'm attuned now to the term Paper Street now when all sorts of things.
I think it should be noted too, a real great supporting performance in the film is Jared Harris, who I like in everything he does, but he can transform himself into a lot of different types of characters, from what he played on Fringe to.
So and he's like Lieutenant Dan. He's the Lieutenant Dan character of the film.
Yeah. There you go.
He's such a distinctive look and a distinctive voice that you would think it would be very difficult for him to hide in a role, and he just does. Every one of his characters are completely different, and when he plays a bastard, you hate him, you know. And when he plays, it's really hard to do. It really is very difficult to do. Where the only other person who played a good guy that you love and a bad guy that was despicable, that you just wanted to see killed, was probably Guy Pearce. In Count of Monte Cristo, he is just vile in that film. He really is. And then you watch him in something like Time Machine, where he's just this avuncular, out of water scientist, wandering around wide-eyed. It's really impressive range that he has. Yeah. And so Jared Harris has kind of the same energy.
I agree. Yep.
He's got a character in the Expanse TV show.
Oh,
and he's only in the first season of it.
Right. But he's so
great. Yeah, he's So powerful.
Fun show.
The thing I found most interesting in sort of reflecting on this after having watched this again is, and I went out of my way to kind of look for it this time. There are no overtly bad people in this movie. You know, there are no characters that he runs across in his life that are evil or just downright bad.
No.
I think that they went out of their way to show that it was his life was kind of populated by just people.
I think that's part.
I sort of got a bad vibe from his dad when he was coming out of the brothel. Of course, his dad is shown to be almost villainous for throwing a baby in the river. Now, here's the funny thing is, when I was watching the beginning of the movie, I was watching it distractedly, so I didn't put the sequences together. So when he runs into his father at the brothel, I didn't quite know that was his dad. Like, I didn't recognize him. So when he pulls up to him on the street and he offers him a ride, and Brad Pitt is basically like, well, that's very kind of you. That's the only time I think in the film that I kind of got a menacing feeling, like, you know, it's like this stranger is off now, because I didn't recognize who he was, that there was a connection with the two of them.
Right.
So it kind of came off a little menacing, you know, that some stranger was offering him a ride and that he was, you know, perennially innocent. So he would, you know, he didn't. Maybe it's just what the film's trying to say is his instincts are not keen and he's not picking up on the threat. And it turned out to be there was something, you know, there was a whole different reason as to why the guy wanted to get a better look at him.
Yeah. Right.
But that was the only time that I kind of got a kind of danger feeling, you know, like from another character. And that includes when they were attacked by a U-boat, you know. So
yeah, true.
Yeah. I mean, and you write that off to that's war. You know, that's that's you know that's two sides fighting each other. That's not evil. That's just the position. That's the position you're in.
I got a way worse feeling when the car pulled up beside him on the road than I did when, you know, when a Nazi stuck his head out of the U-boat, started machine gunning them.
Right. You know, and at the end of the day, the father, I think, is you can say he's mostly redeemed.
Yeah, he's
you know, at the end, you know, he understands what he did, and he's obviously has tortured himself for a long time over it.
Yeah.
You know,
well, his wife's last words to him were, you know, find a place for him, you know? Right. So, I mean, if you have any kind of heart, that'll mess you up real bad.
Yes, exactly. I just, I like this movie a lot. It has a brilliant cast. It's to your, you know, to both of your points about, you know, there's never a time in it where you're like, oh, how deep are we into this? How much time do I have left? There's never, you know, regardless of the burn rate, which is pretty slow in this film overall.
Oh yeah.
You know, you don't mind. It keeps you interested. There's never a time when you're like, all right, let's wrap this up. Let's move on. Let's get to the next part. You know, I love the sequence where he meets the what is it? What the hell was the guy in Russia, in Murmansk, where Tilda Swinton's character, and he builds that whole relationship out of just going down and drinking tea with her every night.
Yep.
And he's like, and I love that she's like, I fear I've led you the wrong way. She's like, you know, this isn't how a married woman is supposed to act. And he goes, I don't really have any idea how a married woman is supposed to act. It's like,
he's
okay.
There's a lot of Forrest Gumpisms in this, where he's just so ignorant to the world.
He's innocent. Yeah. He's just plain. I lost track a couple of times because of how old he looked versus how naive and young he was supposed to be at the time.
Right. Yep.
So that was but I mean, that's a design of the film. That's supposed to happen.
That's a gimmick.
But a couple of times.
That's a gimmick they exploited. That was good.
And it really worked, because I'm like, wow, okay.
Where am I now?
Like, imagine. Yeah, exactly. Imagine this is and everybody's giving him kind of deferential treatment because they think he's so much older than them. You know, they just automatically give him a little bit of majesty in whatever he does, and he's just so wide-eyed and innocent that the dynamic is really kind of, I was afraid for him for most of the film, even though, and that it had nothing to do with the menace of the characters. I just, as young people, when they're finding things out and they're exploring the world, and it's not a kind world that he was in, especially, coming from, starting with World War I, right into World War II. And, so for the most part, I was just afraid of that he was going to lose that wide-eyed kind of innocence thing that was basically his whole character. And he managed to hold on to it all the way up till probably towards the end.
Yep.
When he kept, when he kept popping up again, even though he had already left his wife and daughter, and he just kept coming around. And then you start to see him. He's kind of the nobility of what he had done originally. He's not that, oh man, what am I looking for? He doesn't have that fortitude anymore, and
Right.
now he's looking for his own emotional solace, I guess.
Yep.
And then at that point, showing up at that point, meeting his daughter at that point, now he is in a clear position to do some serious damage to all these relationships or whatever. But you don't blame him. By then in the film, you're so familiar with him and you're so invested in his predicament that you don't really blame the damage that they could potentially do. But that was the only time that I was kind of like, all right, dude, you can't get any of this back. It's too dangerous for everybody involved.
Well, his honesty guides him the whole film. So it's as honesty usually does. It usually gets you into some kind of trouble eventually. Right? So
yeah.
Another one of the major changes from the original story. So when he's born as an old man, it's treated much more fantastically in the story than the sort of like the more realistic approach that the movie took, which is him being born as like an old man looking baby.
Yeah.
So
that apparently frightened the hell out of everybody.
Well, in the same scene in the original story, the father goes into the nursery at the hospital and there's this strange wizened creature, laying in a bassinet with its feet hanging over the edge and a long beard and long gray hair, like looking like a little Methuselah. Okay.
Yeah.
And he walks up to him and begins to have a conversation with him, like he's fully formed and speaking.
Okay.
So like he's literally born as an old man
with knowledge.
With knowledge.
Oh, jeez.
And truly travels backwards, almost Merlin-esque.
Yeah, that's
in
more
the opposite direction.
That's more allegorical, telling it that way. I think
yes.
Fincher made it more practical, I guess would be.
I agree, and it's a change that makes a lot more sense.
I can't believe this was a short story. I mean, to tell this, how long is the story?
9,400 words.
Yeah, I wasn't reading that before today.
It's only like 21 pages printed out.
Wow. I mean, that's astounding to me that he got all that out, or got out what he wanted. And
no, believe me, the story is very stripped down. It really is literally just the core concept.
Okay, that's
there's a little bit of layout of the relationships with the father and the son and Hildegard, but other than that, it talks a little bit about some of his adventures. He goes into the military and rises very quickly through the ranks, which is funny because when he retires from the military, the Spanish-American War comes around and he gets a letter in the mail one day saying that, officers of a certain level are being, asked to come back with an automatic raise in rank, which essentially puts him into a brigadier general position. But at that point in his life, he now looks like he's 13.
Yeah, there's no way.
That's funny.
Well, no, in the story, he literally goes and has a uniform custom made, and and shows up at the base with his paperwork, looking like a kid, dressed up like an army general.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And they're like, son, what are you doing? You know, and then his own son very unhappily has to come and pick him up because they think that he's been, you know, the wayward son of this guy.
Right.
And it's really his father. It's at that point about in the story that the son essentially disowns him and just, you know, they split up. But like I said, it's a much more as sort of ethereally as Fitzgerald wraps it up. It still ends on a much you feel a lot worse generally about the whole thing, which is, I think, the polar opposite of the way you feel watching the film.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The film is much more positive, even being anchored the way it is, you know, around essentially you know, the character Daisy and, you know, how it's all transmitted. I do like the scene with Julia Ormond when she's like, so this was my dad and this is how you're telling me.
That was good.
Yeah. And she's like, yeah, well.
Because it was kind of jarring at one point when she was reading and she said, when did you meet my dad? And he said,
right.
and she and Daisy says a couple of years after this, you know, this was a couple of, and the next thing that happened was she was giving birth, and I'm like, and me personally, I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't you just? That was your opportunity. Why wouldn't you just tell her outright? But then you realize that there was another father involved. So, you know, she's holding on to that until the last possible minute.
Yep.
You know,
yeah, they didn't want to give that little piece up until because he still had to leave. He still had to have make the decision to leave.
Right. That's yeah. I think the way they're constructing that, according to what you're telling us about the story, I think the way they constructed this about a woman who was, you know, on her deathbed, telling her daughter the story of her father, you know, but allowing her to find out about her father in her father's own words, you know, this phenomenal, you know, circumstance is being written in her own words. So, I mean, that eliminates a lot of problems. That the daughter, I mean, because you could honestly feel like if an old woman was telling you this on her deathbed, you'd be like, okay, you know, obviously we got to do something about your meds, you know, because and to allow
legitimizes everything.
Yeah, allow her to read it and react, and then she kind of get the impression that Daisy's holding on for her daughter to finish the diary for any questions that she might have, you know, about this. It's much more powerful, I think, than you know, than watching a son who kind of disowns his father and then watching everything fall apart for him. You know, I'm still going to read the story because I'm fascinated that you could fit all of that emotionality into 21 pages. Me too. You know?
Well, and that's just it. It's not, because it's not there. Its core concept is really what it is. I'm telling you that the core ideas are there, but what Eric Roth did to that story, you know, is you know, it's the idea of a man being born old, and as he ages, he gets younger. All right, write everything else around that idea.
Yep.
You know, write a story around that idea. There you go. So.
Well, it works.
All right. Yeah. So that is The Curious Case of Benjamin Button.
Are we going to talk about where it ranks amongst his films, or are you about to do that?
We're going to do the martini after we do Down the Tubes.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's at the end. My bad.
So I guess it is time for us to go down the tubes.
And again, the internet is not something that you just dump something on. It's not a big truck. It's a series of tubes.
Right. So, down the tubes. So, we start off with, so for this film, they had essentially all of their official posters were really where any sort of, in the promotions and marketing department, used any sort of real difference. So starting off, there were three main advance posters. This first one with Brad Pitt, with all the text being backwards. And then the credits and Christmas Day going the right way. Its partner is the next image, which is Cate Blanchett, with all the information going the correct direction.
Right. So they work in tandem, obviously. Okay.
Yes, exactly. And then if you go to the third image, it's the two put together. And this was the main, where this is an advanced poster version, but this is also the main poster as well. When it was released, the coming soon part, that wasn't changed out. This was just essentially the main release poster for this film. From there were 7 advanced posters done using stills from the movie and quotes from the script. One with him and young Daisy under the table fort, and then them on board.
Creepiest scene in the film.
Well, for a couple of different reasons, right? And it creepier now than it would have been then, and obviously from the standpoint of the grandmother,
right?
And because she didn't, wasn't fully understanding the fact that he's only a couple of years older,
right? Right? Yeah, they're contemporaries.
She just thinks it's an old man fooling around with a little girl in the middle of the night. Yeah, it's like maybe not. And this line, this line is what's key to a big chunk of this film, is you never know what's coming for you. That I think that plays a lot into what, Hassan, you were saying, how there were these moments in the film that you felt, that could have been treated as these sort of like more peaky sort of events in the film. And a lot of the major moments were just treated as also rants, just like that's the next thing that happens. And then we move on. And I really feel that this, from as a child, when Mr. Tizzy is telling, sitting in the kitchen telling him that story about his cousin being an actor, and the whole thing, and it end up being John Wilkes Booth. And
then the fact that that's Mahershala,
I know,
just the way.
So great early appearance of Mahershala Ali. There's nothing that can be said probably that hasn't been said already, but Taraji P. Henson in this film is so great. Yeah, it's just awesome. So amazing for a woman to go through, from what looks to be mid to late 20s through her death in her, I'm guessing, 80s, probably 70s or 80s.
She was tough. She was tough on me, because that reminds me of she was absolutely my mom.
Oh yeah.
And so that was now it wasn't. It's one of those things where you're watching and then suddenly it hits a beat.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, so I mean, she didn't start off that way, but she eventually just became my mom. And that was, so that was really well done. Yeah. That's an unsung role,
Oh,
it really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then the Fincher's montage at the end of it, where he's showing, he's doing the push in on all of the characters, and the various characters of his life. And his mother is just with her arms out,
Yep.
In her push it. That did it. I'm like, damn you, Fincher.
Damn you, Fincher.
Damn you.
Son of a bitch.
You got me. You got me.
So the next one is him, writing, reading a letter from Daisy. Just, the stills from the film.
Yeah, and then you know what? If you I'm sorry, Lathan. Go ahead.
No, I was just quick thing. I don't. These are all fine. I think the best one is the first one. You're like no one. You're like no one I've ever met. Anybody I've ever met.
Right.
I think the others are they're just trying to mine it for stuff. And
yeah. I really think they were trying to push this movie, and they were hedging there. They probably had some theaters who put up all 7 of these on one wall in a hallway going down. Just to really pushing this movie.
See, now I was about to say that if you really loved this movie, these posters would be more effective after the fact than intriguing. Yes.
Right. I agree.
The re-release.
Yeah. Exactly. If this movie was, and like a phenomenon, like say like The Martian. Right. Yeah. And then it was a re-release and you come to the theater specifically to see it again, and the walls were lined with these, it would enhance the experience a lot more.
Right.
I do like the addition behind where it says The Curious Case of Benjamin Button in the title. and that sort of what looks like a designy shape. It's the word life forwards and backwards.
Yeah, no, that's
which
cool.
I do like. It's a little subtle,
and it's tough too, because it's as graphic with in the mind of graphic design, it's a hard image to put together and still get readability out of it.
Yeah.
So it's really well done. It's masterfully done.
And then there were, as it got closer, obviously there were these next two posters were the last two I believe released. The black and white one I didn't remember seeing anywhere.
I didn't either.
That one I didn't recognize, but the next one with her holding the baby, that one I do remember. So I know I ran into that poster somewhere along the lines.
Hang on a second.
Yeah, I don't like the second one. I don't like that cut down the middle. I know what they're trying to do, but it doesn't work that well.
No, not particularly. And it's fine, but it's not doing anything.
The next one's better. It's more subtle, and you gotta look to see what's going on there. So
right.
Which one is this one?
The one where she's holding the baby.
Okay. Yeah.
Little old man baby.
Yeah. A white baby and a black woman in an extreme black background. Where the both of them look like cutouts. Almost, because that's very profound image right there.
Well, it's a way of forcing essentially a well-used design ethic, but on a photographic image, which is much harder to do normally without like photoshopping everything out.
And again, it's more powerful when you know the story.
Yep, for sure.
Yes, of course. Absolutely.
Because it goes right it gets to punch right into the heart when you know the story. If you didn't know, it wouldn't really inform you of too much.
No, unless you really investigated that baby and what's going on there. And this baby looks a little creepy. Maybe if you added some liver spots to his back or something, I don't know.
Yeah, but I think that would
be too much.
Put you over
that
the
might
top.
be a little weird. So I was telling Latham earlier that when it comes to this film, once similarly to not to the extreme that Excalibur was, but not a lot of alternative posters have been done for this film. Strangely enough, I was still able to track down it's like 9 of them, but I found it interesting that for the most part, other than 2, they're kept very much to the minimalist side of things. People have chosen to just distill the idea down to like a singular image. So this first one by Caleb Kerr is just an hourglass with the sand obviously running the opposite way. Yeah, there goes Latham.
Yeah. Jesus.
Oh wait, can you rotate the image?
Yeah, much easier.
Oh.
Or your computer.
That's gonna be a running joke.
No idea what you're talking about. And the next one, this one feels honestly more like a book cover. But
yeah, definitely.
Even though it says obviously filmed by David Fincher, it feels like a book cover to me.
And it's an esoteric book cover where you're like, I have no freaking idea what the story is.
Yeah, right.
Except maybe there's a woman dancing or falling.
There's clocks and ballet.
Yes.
I don't understand anything else.
Yep.
This may as well be a poster for what's that Coen Brothers movie? The one with Paul Newman. No. Bill with
Paul Newman.
Paul Newman.
The Hudsucker Proxy.
Thank you.
That was
Hudsucker
after.
Proxy.
Wow.
After.
My God, I forgot that was Paul Newman.
I love Hudsucker Proxy.
That's awesome. Unknown movie for most.
That's my favorite movie of theirs.
Wow, that's a good choice.
Barton Fink that's a tough film.
Yeah.
It's a tough film to figure out.
That's a good film student film, but I liked it. Anyway.
Yeah. So Emily Vincent, very simple, very straightforward.
I like that one, but again, it looks like a book cover. So
I agree. It's laid out very, that's the thing with minimalism for the most part. A lot of, especially if they bother to use text without full credits, if they're just going to stick with a title and a couple of characters, it ends up coming off more like a book cover.
I mean, if I saw it at the theater, I'd be like, okay, what's that movie about? But
it kind of gives it all away, though.
Yeah,
it
really
gives the whole game away.
Yeah.
This next one is by Lucas Lacono. I like this one a lot. It's, again, very simple, but it gives you symbolically enough with all the winter trees above and the sort of full foliage tree below.
Yeah. That's a more poetic representation of what the story is about.
Correct.
It still would confuse the hell out of you if you had no idea what you were looking at.
Right.
But
I thought this was about an arborist.
I think this one would be better if the trees were different. They're all the same at the top. So I don't know.
I thought this was about Gondor. I thought I was reading about the trees of Gondor.
The Curious Case of Ent-a-min Button. Bad Tolkien joke. Thank you. So next is a man named Mads Hindheed Svangard.
Oh my God.
And misspelling Kate Blanchett's name at the top there.
I mean, when you make that mistake, come on, dude. That takes 5 seconds to figure that out.
He's Norwegian. What do you want? Next, we have a guy named Movie Boy. He goes by the name Movie Boy. He's actually got a ton of super minimalist posters, but he uses more realistic art style in his work, and I like this one a lot. Actually, this is it's cool. A representation of the big clock.
Yeah, going backwards.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now that's the other thing too, that
very subtle.
That they, I love the idea that this guy who lost his son in the war built this clock that ran backwards to, in the hopes of, he would bring all these people back, the memories of them back. And then, of course,
he shamed the public officials into dealing with it.
And into leaving this backwards running clock up there for like 80 years.
At like a train station, no less, right?
Yeah, at the train station. And
that's not useful.
Yeah, Teddy Roosevelt. He's just like, yeah, all right.
And then they replace it with like a digital clock. And wow.
Right, and then, the clock eventually gets flooded from at the same time that she's passing, the whole thing, story, it's beginning to end. Pascal Vidacek. You can't get much more simpler than this.
I don't understand how two teepees apply to this story.
Yes. I don't understand.
Those are teepees blown over by the wind.
It's one A-wing fighter hurricane following another A-wing fighter very closely. This is a Star Wars poster.
They're trying to mask their radar signal. Obviously. Duh.
So here's a funny story.
I don't like that one, by the way.
All right. So here's a funny bit. If you actually have the interest, if you type his name and put posters into the Google machine and do a search online for it, he actually has a series of 7 posters with all of the play buttons off of a cassette recorder and what movies they tie to. So he has stop, pause, play, fast forward, rewind, record, all set to specific films. So it's more about matching a film to the symbol.
Okay.
So this is actually part of a series of 7 posters. And if you go and look at the actual series, it's pretty interesting. It's what he's done. Okay. What he's done is pretty neat.
Cool.
This next poster is by a guy who's
the one for 2001 is pretty. It's pretty funny.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. So this poster is by this guy Scott Saslow, who did the Heat poster that Hassan, that you liked the best out of all of them, the one, the shot of the city with the Heat in the white box. So this is his poster for Benjamin Button. So a guy who uses stock photos and typography to kind of do his job. Yes, this is a really neat. It doesn't necessarily.
It's a little creepy.
Well, it doesn't. Well, you know what it is I like about it is it's simple enough, but it gives you kind of all the touch points that you need for this.
Again, if we know the material,
in retrospect,
it works.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Without it, you're like, what is this Benjamin Button story about?
Right.
Like there's a lot of kids involved.
Hey, dummy, the text is backwards.
I feel like I'm gonna get my shoulder punched.
About what?
What?
Never mind.
And in this last one, I could not find an artist for this, no matter how hard I looked. So, but it was one of the last images there that I kind of liked. A onesie with the hat and the glasses and a cane. I thought that was
I like this.
It was kind of amusing. Did some fun things with the typography, but
Cool.
super simple.
Creative.
Yeah. Creative enough.
Yeah.
I think my favorite is The Movie Boy.
Okay.
And Lacano. That's a good one. No. Yeah, the one you said, number 12. That's a good. The rest of them are kind of, they're good. They're good generic fare. They're decent posters. But then the one with when he and Daisy under the table. Those are my 4 favorite out of this group.
My favorite thing about the posters in general, especially the official posters, is that first one with Brad Pitt where the text is backwards.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's all the text is the right way with Cate Blanchett's poster.
Yeah.
So I found photos of this poster being displayed, but they had put it into the light box the other way so that the text was forward and the word
face is backwards.
And no, it's just the face wouldn't be one way or the other, but the words Christmas Day were reversed. And they thought that was the way it should go because the text was then forwards. They clearly didn't understand the concept.
Well, that would have to be explained. That would have to come with instructions, or anybody would make that mistake.
Yeah, they'd be like,
that's the thing that gets you fired at the movie theater when you put that in the into the case, and your manager's like, "This is backwards. What's wrong with you?" You're fired.
Right, but you know what? If I'm looking at this, and if you tell me that, hey, I think the posters came in, I think there's a problem with this one, and then you look at it, you're not going to go and put the poster in so that the studio credits are backwards and the website information is backwards. You're going to put that in so that that's readable.
Yeah.
Because the film studio is not going to put their logo on it expecting people to put them in backwards.
Trying to
but I mean that's just nitpicky to say the least, but yeah, it's funny to watch the movie. You keep going through the movie and it's like all of a sudden you get to the point where Brad Pitt becomes Brad Pitt of the age. Yeah. And it's just like all of a sudden it's like you've been watching him as this older man and all of a sudden he becomes the Brad Pitt we all sort of know from that era. And you're just like, it's almost overwhelming at how attractive a man he is, and you're just like, it's almost breathtaking. It's kind of scary.
She gets mad at him because of it.
Yeah.
Because he's so pretty.
Yeah.
And she's, she's all ruined, lying with her leg up and everything. She played that really well because, well, or not. Depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
Because there could have been a way where she played it where she shooed him off, but you could tell she really wanted him to stay, and she just couldn't stand the way she looked at that moment. But then again, for the sake of the film, if she shoot him off, she's like, I don't want to be around you, just go away. And then she shows up later. I think it's more powerful when she shows up later.
Well, that also, she says when she reads that part out of the book about how he stuck around for a few weeks just to look after her.
Yeah.
And
she didn't even know that.
And she's like, oh, I didn't even know that. So she's been in possession of that diary the whole time and never bothered to crack it open.
No, that's got to be too painful,
One would think. One would think. All right, so we are ready for a martini. What do you guys think? I'm going to go through these real quick. These are with the Rotten Tomato scores in the ranking of Fincher's films. The whole library, 10 films down here. Okay? So at 96, The Social Network. 89, Zodiac. 87, Gone Girl. 86, Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. 81, 7. 79, Fight Club. 75, Panic Room. 73, The Game. 71, The Curious Case of Benjamin Button. And 44, Alien 3.
Oh man, poor
I
Alien
know.
3.
Don't get me started.
Well, I think his weakest film out of all of them, and again, it's not. I mean, I'm just checking. I want to make sure I gave it what I'm.
It's one of those things. I used to always say, the worst Pixar film is still better than probably 85% most other films that are out there. So when you say his weakest film, unless you're going to go with the standard route of Alien 3 being his worst film, then you're still
you would say that.
You're still saying that his worst film. I mean, I think we're all saying that his worst film is relative to his work and not in any way pejorative of the world of cinema. Because in and of his work, his worst film, again, still better than most everything else.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know about
a lot
most,
of it,
but I mean, the worst rating I gave a film of his was 2 and 3/4.
Okay,
so a little bit less than 3, and that would, I think, his worst.
Yes,
not worst, but
lowest rated
on his list. Lowest rated would be Panic Room. Now, the movie I think that is most overrated that he's done, and I'm definitely on an island.
I know what you're going to
here.
say.
I still gave it 3 stars. What'd you say?
Say?
Go ahead. What is it?
Social Network.
No, I love Social Network. I think that's probably one of his best.
Okay.
I think Fight Club is immensely overrated.
I'm not far away from you there, actually.
It's a good movie, but as soon as you figure out the gimmick, it doesn't do anything for me once you figure out the gimmick.
Yeah.
It's very clever, and then it's betrayed by its own cleverness, I think, at the end.
As far as rewatchability goes, I agree with you 100%. Once you've seen that film, there's not a whole lot of reasons to revisit it.
I agree with that.
Yep. I have never understood the massive amount of love that is held for Fight Club to this day.
It's a good movie.
Yes. Again, I don't know that I'd necessarily call. I mean, I don't know how weak I would say it is. I would say it's probably the least interesting for me out of all his films. Okay. I would probably put it at the bottom because of that.
Okay. All right.
I like Panic Room. I think it's well done. I love Jodie Foster in that movie. I absolutely love Dwight Yoakam in that movie. He absolutely owns that as the bad guy.
Yep.
I just rewatched Zodiac again recently too. That's one of those movies where there's so much. It's like I feel like watching Zodiac now. It's funny. It's like watching one of those 10-part serial killer specials on Netflix or Amazon, where you're like, but it's condensed down to 3 hours.
Yeah, condensed.
Yeah, if you want to say.
I can't turn it off when that movie comes on. It's just, I've seen it probably 8 times, and it just.
You know what movie does that to me? I literally cannot turn it off. If I catch it in the middle of it, I'll watch it all the way to the end. Spotlight. Yep. Spotlight.
Oh.
I like that movie. It's decent. Yeah.
I've probably seen Spotlight, and I'm not kidding, probably 15 times.
Didn't that win Best Picture?
Yes.
And it was just like, it's a good movie. It's just
I can't tell you, Steve. I think I've seen Spotlight more than 20 times.
Wow.
A friend of mine showed it to me, and I watched it. Moments later, I owned it. It's one of those things. While I was at his house and I ordered it on Amazon while watching it, and I've watched it tons. It was a go-to movie.
Yep.
It's actually relaxing to watch that movie for some reason.
Yeah. And Moneyball was written by my 2 favorite screenwriters, Aaron Sorkin and Steve Zalian.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it's got Sorkin all over it. It's very. A lot of scenes are very Sorkin-esque in that film. He's so good about that. Like, even if you look at the Social Network is just a whole bunch of people in rooms.
Oh yeah.
There's no action in that film at all.
Nope.
but still he's got that Fincher tension, that something terrible is about to happen at any moment.
Sorkin made a 2-hour movie, essentially, wrote a 2-hour film about a subject nobody really gives a shit about, and made it so riveting that you can't turn your eyes away.
It's stunning that movie's 10 years old too.
I know.
I didn't get on Facebook till 2008, I think. So, or 2009. So for me to have the Facebook story told 10 years ago already is nuts. That's just, that prescience is amazing. It's an amazing movie.
Yeah. I out of all Fincher's films, I think that's the one I've seen the least.
Okay.
The Social Network?
Yeah. Or possibly Gone Girl, just because Gone Girl is the most recent.
What's your favorite film?
Yeah.
If you have
Fincher's?
One? Yeah.
Oh, hands down, it's 7.
Yeah. I'm with Stevie.
That movie altered my view of film.
I wonder if
Hassan, what's your?
I wonder if I have the same kind of. I wonder if that was the turning point for me also about what. I remember my mom saw 7 before I did, and she came home, and she said she was gonna go. She was one of these people that said she threatens to do things for herself and never does it. I'm gonna go see this movie. I'm gonna have a piece of cake, and just never pulls it off. She never got around to, so it always came off like a threat, like you're not gonna have the guts to follow through. And she went. So when she came home, I asked her, okay, did you go see 7? She was supposed to go with some friends, and I'll never forget her reaction. It was like, yeah,
yeah,
that's how she yeah, I saw that. And I'm like, so was it good? She goes, yeah. It was these this labored, I can't say it was bad, but I don't know quite what I saw. Yeah, that film, I cannot describe. Sometimes when you have a movie when they're chasing a serial killer or some kind of monster, and you don't see the monster at all, and you only see the aftermath of what the monster has done and the destruction that is left behind. When you see the monster, finally, when they reveal it, it kind of grounds the movie a little bit, and you're like, oh, all right, so it's got 10 heads, and it's got an axe, but there it is. we just got to kill it, we're good. And something about the fact that this monster was Kevin Spacey.
Yeah.
Yep. And you see him, and he's there, and you're still like, no, something's wrong. This does not fix anything. For a fact, when he turns himself in, he's up to something. Fine. But there's something so wrong with everything about him and everything that's going on that the revelation that he is a normal human being that's just, that popped his cork somewhere along the line and, decided to do something methodically evil about his misgivings about society. Besides that, there's something just so off about Kevin Spacey's behavior. Yeah, there's
perfectly
just
normal, perfectly healthy.
Yeah. And it's just like the rest of that movie is like the worst part of that movie for me was the end. And I don't mean worse as in I didn't like it. It's just a worse experience of sitting through that.
Yeah, it was hard to sit through the first time because you know it's coming, and
yeah,
it's got one of the best last lines of a film ever with Morgan Freeman. It's just
I'll be around.
No, he says says something. He says 2 things, and he says,
I believe that the world is a fine place. The world's a fine place and worth fighting for. I believe in the second part.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. Fuck.
Yeah.
So Hassan, what's your favorite?
I would say Girl with a Dragon Tattoo.
Wow.
Because I read the book. I saw the Swedish movies, and I said to myself before going into his movie, "There's nothing this can offer me." I've read the books,
right?
I've seen the film, I've seen the films. I'm just here to watch an American piss all over, you know.
And then you nailed it.
Yeah, and then you're watching it, and you just realize it's not the material that this guy's using. It's just the way he rolls out a story.
You bet.
It's the way he tells a story. Because I knew everything about it. I knew the punchline. I knew what was going to happen. I knew what was going wrong. And I'm still like, and I've said from the beginning, I remember reading The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo. And I remember I've never been so riveted and locked in as to when Zenstrom is actually explaining everything to Blomquist. He's explaining the mystery. He's talking about his niece who vanished. And I was like, this is going to be amazing. You know, just the way just his method, his methodical outlaying of all the seeds and stuff like that, just how you tell a mystery, how you set things up, and you ask every one of these questions. And then I remember when the mystery is revealed in the book, I'm like, oh, okay. You know, it just, and I don't know if that was because the book is a letdown or because I hyped it so much there was no way it could actually meet my expectations. So again, with all that, watching this film, knowing the books, knowing the original films, something about the way he just tells that story.
Yep. Everything
he uses, the magic behind it. If you get the Blu-ray of it, there are like 4.5 hours of supplemental materials that are actually much more fascinating than the film itself. It's fantastic.
Actually, one of the Blu-rays I own, the 2-disc set. Yep.
Yeah. I would say his best film is Seven. I would say my favorite film of his is A Girl with a Dragon Tattoo, with Zodiac being probably a close second.
Right.
And Zodiac just because it effectively creeped the hell out of me. You know, again, through doing almost nothing, you know, very little, you know, again, another procedural, another people in rooms talking, and another obsessive person going slowly mad, trying to get to the bottom of something that, by the way, is never resolved.
Correct.
Yeah, that's why it's only resolved by a piece of conversation, and that's if you believe in the guy who says it.
Yep.
And I think that's why it's so unsettling is you don't know the story of the Zodiac, and you get to the end of that story, surprise, they never found it. I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
Or not great, depending on your point of view.
No, I don't think it's great.
It's great storytelling, but it's not great that we didn't find this.
And by the way, Zodiac has Mysterio, Hulk, Iron Man, Hannibal Lecter, and Casey Jones.
And Roger Rabbit.
Classic. I think it's safe to say.
Tell me the comic book industry hasn't dominated Hollywood all of a sudden.
Right? all these great company-wide films that no one knows exist.
I think it's
like, oh my God, Sabretooth is Batman's boss, and Batman is the Hulk's boss. What's going on?
Some kids are going to watch that and see that. They're going to say that. They're going to say that to their friend.
That's how movies are going to be defined from now on.
Yeah,
that's
for a
the
long
thing.
time.
Oh, did you see that movie about that old actor from the turn of the century? Start with Iron Man.
Yeah. Pretty much.
I mean,
I think it's safe to say with Fincher. I mean, for anyone listening, you can't go wrong picking. If you've never seen any of his films, you could spin a wheel, pick any of them, and you'll be entertained. So
I agree 100%.
Yeah, including Alien 3.
Yeah, that's I like that movie.
Which is much maligned.
A visual monster. But
also,
I saw that movie in the theater, and the hype about that movie was so bad that I just absolutely went in there like, all right, it's gotta be bad. But I mean, I gotta see what they do with Ripley. You know, I gotta see how they do the sequel to Aliens. I mean, I didn't like some of the changes. I didn't like what happened to Newt. I didn't like what happened to Hicks. But I gotta tell you, especially that chase scene at the end, I'm like, this is fantastic. You know, this movie and the look of it it's got the most ambitious aesthetics of all of them.
Yeah.
You know, it really gets that dystopian future thing.
Yep.
Perfect.
Maybe 4 competes with it, but yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Because those guys are very visual too,
yes, they are.
But I wrote in my review of it, I said, an underrated sequel where the lack of things happening works well. And that's it's more of the landscape you see, and you're waiting for what's next, and there's not much, it's just a bunch of guys who are at the end, and it's like, where can they go with it? But the lack of things happening moves the story along. I really like it.
And the film works so well. Someone actually said this when they suggested it, and I'm like, wow, it could work either way. The film is so well done that it could be exactly what you see happen, or it could be some crazy fever dream that Ripley is having while in cryostasis. It works in every capacity. And in fact, if they did an Alien 5 and Ripley was fine, and they said that Alien 3 was a dream, I wouldn't really have any problem accepting that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's just really well done. And I mean, Fincher takes heat for it, but it's still catapulted his career. It still put him on the map.
Yep.
So.
Yep.
Yeah, he gave his all in that movie, that's for sure. Well, that and the Madonna video put him on the map.
Yeah.
And by the way, Hassan, screenwriter for Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, Steve Zalian.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, he's good. He good.
That last scene in that film where she drives off.
Oh, yeah.
I know the hardest stunt in the film, according to Fincher, because they had to get the stunt driver to go down an incline of cobblestones on a motorcycle. And so he was like, this is the most dangerous stunt in the whole film. Right as it.
I like the ending of the Swedish one a little better. I know that they were trying to tie off some arteries with in the American version, because obviously they had no clue whether or not they were going to continue on, which they didn't.
Which is a tragedy.
I agree.
Especially for Rooney Mara.
But the ending of the original Swedish film, I like that a lot, because and that was my first introduction to Noomi Rapace, and
not seen it.
What's that?
Not seen it.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So, okay, so never mind. So
our show's over. Thanks for coming, everyone.
And on that note.
Sorry, that's my bad.
I would like to extend our thanks once again to Purple Planet Music. Get your own awesome music at purple-planet.com. Please check out our website at cinementalpod.com for all of the poster images we discuss on our Down the Tube segments. And don't forget to download and subscribe to the Cinemental Podcast wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Or you can always listen to new episodes at our website, cinementalpod.com. Also, you can follow at CinementalPod on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and spoiler alert, coming soon to YouTube. Thanks once again, guys. Hassan Godwin, Latham Conga III. And as always, in the words of our friend and mentor, Truman Burbank.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.